Hi there, I'm Coach Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And in this video, we're going to be talking about be careful of these 3 bad habits.
Be on the lookout.
So this is a cautionary tale for you guys because so many of you are trying to figure out how to repair your connection with your partner. However, you've got to minimize your mistakes and doing things that are going to hurt the connection. You can't just obsess about when they come back. You've got to figure out how to get healthy in the meantime. You've got to do things that are going to help you to have a healthy relationship and keep it strong. Because whenever we do things that are toxic or negative, it can really hurt our connection with that person. And then they ultimately leave. So just think of the connection as like a big part of the connection is communication. And if you're not communicating in a healthy way, it's going to make them lose their attraction for you.
Exactly. So a lot of the information that we'll be sharing today is based on a Psych Today article by Dr. Janice Webb. She says that probably the single most important contribution that you can make to a relationship is understanding your own feelings, with the second biggest contribution being understanding your partner's feelings. So this is also about awareness and also the way we communicate our feelings. We do this constantly. We are constantly communicating with one another, whether we think about it or not. Unconsciously, our bodies are sending messages that our words don't have to. So in this video, we want you to be aware of both the body language, tone, the way things are communicated, because all of this matters when we're talking about how a partner interprets what you're trying to say.
Yeah. And one of the reasons that we're always talking about attachment styles is because the way we attach and the way we're hurt in our early childhood is often going to be a big impact on how we're currently feeling with our romantic partners. So part of the reason we're always trying to enlighten you with attachment styles is so you can understand yourself. And once you understand your partner's attachment issue or attachment style, you will understand their feelings better. So you see why we explain those things in trying to help you figure out how to get an ex back and how to repair that relationship. When you understand yourself, your issues, how you're feeling, what triggers you, and you can also understand your ex, it helps. The communication goes much smoother. There's a lot less toxicity, hurt, anger. You can minimize the things that are going to lead to the disconnection, the disruption of the connection, the losing of attraction. It's all tied together. So what you have to understand is that you learned a lot of your communication styles and skills, or lack of them, from your childhood, from your parents. How did they get along? How did they argue? How did they communicate? Did they communicate? I mean, many times you've had parents that say, oh, you're fine. Don't talk about it. I'll give you something to be upset about. And so many people grow up not even being aware of how they feel because they've been taught and told to minimize it their whole life.
Yeah, not to mention family secrets, when you're explicitly told not to talk about it to anybody else either. So you're teaching, in a way, your child to not be vulnerable with others with certain things.
Yep. But you have to outgrow those things. Just because it's how life was when you were early in life and you're a child and you basically had to go along with the system, you were kind of helpless, that doesn't mean you have to stay the same way and act the same way you did your whole life. You got to mature and learn healthier ways to do that. Otherwise, your connections are going to be disrupted, they're going to be hurt, and people lose attraction.
Right, and the way that you learned to communicate when you were a child, when you were a teenager, even a young adult, might not be serving you now in your adult romantic relationship. So really uncover this for yourself and try to see if you can find any patterns in the way that you've talked to people.
Yeah, because you've probably been doing it your whole life and it just seems natural. This is the way it's done. But there's probably a better way to do it.
Exactly. So Dr. Webb points out 3 main ways that people communicate ineffectively, meaning this doesn't work, and in fact it can damage your relationship. It can mean that you are misunderstood. It can also cause a lot of resentment in your relationship. So listen up, because this is important.
Yep.
The very first one, I'm sure we've all done it at some point. If you've had roommates, you have definitely done this, and that is passive aggressiveness.
What does passive aggressive mean?
This is a way of communicating a message without being direct.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, in a way, trying to get others to read your mind. It could be leaving little passive aggressive notes. I had a friend who had a roommate one time. She would never do her dishes. And so to send the message that she wanted the dishes to be done, she put all of the dirty dishes into a trash bag and put them right in front of her door. Never once did this roommate say, hey, maybe you should wash the dishes now and again. So that's a passive aggressive way of communicating. I'm going to do something to try to get your attention instead of telling you directly. It can also be little smart remarks to somebody. Like if you wanted to, I don't know, speed something up, they might be like, wow, I'm really getting hungry. Or wow, and the time is really passing by quickly, or something like this. So they might make a little remark instead of directly saying, hey, can we try to wrap things up so that we can get out of here?
Yeah.
So something like that. It's not direct, and it can often lead to a lot more confusion. You're left trying to guess what your partner or what your ex, in some cases, is trying to say.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe, sometimes people can be really angry. Mm-hmm. And instead of saying, I'm really angry at you right now, they try and look for little ways to get back at you. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Try to do little things to get revenge.
Yeah. It can be seen as a way to punish someone, too.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not going to deal with this as an adult and talk through it and acknowledge my own feelings and be able to sit with your feelings. I'm going to make you feel the way that I feel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This can also be a way of thinking that you're avoiding the conflict, but it actually does the complete opposite. So a lot of people who might be people pleasers or afraid to be direct with their communication might use passive aggressiveness as a means of getting their message across, thinking, okay, maybe they'll receive it a little bit better if they can catch the hint. Mm-hmm. But like I said before, often leads to a lot of confusion. Some things fly right over somebody's heads.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can also be misinterpreted. Sometimes it can create even more conflict. So just be aware of that.
Absolutely.
All right. The second ineffective way to communicate is aggressive communication. So this is just outright accusatory. This can be increasing your volume at somebody. Mm-hmm. This can be making criticisms on your character, assumptions about somebody, jumping to conclusions. Can also be in the heat of emotion, that you say some things that you just don't mean. You always act like this. You always try to embarrass me, or you're always picking at my weaknesses. It can be something where it's showing your unprocessed emotion. You're just stream of consciousness, yelling at this person, being aggressive towards them.
Yep. And what happens is when there's aggression, the other person doesn't feel safe. And safety is so important in your connections. If you want somebody to be vulnerable, they have to feel safe. And that's why we're trying to teach you these things, because this all has to do with attraction. When you're doing things like being aggressive, it kind of squashes the attraction. It makes it lower, less intense. And obviously when there's less intense connection or attraction, somebody's going to be more likely to leave. Mm-hmm. So this is why you got to be aware of these things. Being critical, name calling, attacking somebody's character, instead of maybe identifying their behavior. Like, you may say, he's effing late.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, you're frustrated, you're upset, but you got to try and find ways to say it in a way that isn't going to lead to a fight. Mm-hmm. I would really, this is important. I really want to get there on time today. Something like that. You got to be careful and mindful of what you're communicating and how you're communicating. Otherwise, it's going to hurt your connection.
Mm-hmm. And remember that every time that you communicate, you're setting up the precedent for how you're going to communicate in the future. So slowly, if you start using aggressive tones with each other and aggressive language, it can build up to a point where there is outright contempt for one another. And we don't want that to happen. So nipping that aggression right in the bud, if you start to notice that you're increasing in your volume or the types of things that you're saying, you're feeling a lot of guilt and remorse for afterwards, work on that as soon as possible.
And a lot of these things we're talking about are in the workbooks and the creative healing course. And this is why we have them, so you can work, you literally write them down and think about how to do it in a healthier way. Because what's going to happen is when your ex comes back, you're going to very quickly go back into the old pattern with them if you don't really work through this. You're going to see, as fast as they come back, you're going to quickly revert back to your old ways, and that dynamic is going to come right back between you two, and it's going to fall apart again.
Exactly. It's like when you're a kid and you have a family friend whose family you already know is chaotic. You walk through the door, they're all screaming at each other, and you're thinking, man, they're not even treating each other like friends. Do you guys like each other in here? So the same thing happens in relationships too, is that after a certain point, that type of communication gets normalized, and we don't want that for you.
Yep.
All right, the last one is one that is so common and really hard if you are a joking type of person, a jester, the class clown type of character, but this is sarcasm.
That's our last point?
Shut up.
Really? That's what you want to go with? I can't believe this.
So this is a tough one because sometimes humor can be really helpful to extinguish certain situations, but sometimes it can be really hurtful too. So we would just want to draw awareness to that sometimes it can have the opposite effect on someone.
Yep.
It can be seen as mocking a situation, and it can also be using humor to try to hurt somebody.
Oh, that's a big one. Oh, I was just kidding. And then, the old saying, well, there's a lot of truth in jest. And there is. As a comic, I've seen that. Not always true. Sometimes things are just kind of outrageous and ridiculous, but a lot of times there is a hidden truth in there.
Right, yeah. And it can also be a way of avoiding the actual issue itself, Well, I hope you had a good time with your friends. I hope you have a good time with the boys tonight.
Yeah.
When you're really not feeling okay with it. So instead of directly saying, hey, I'm struggling with this, can we work through it? It's putting out the wrong message and using humor and or, sarcasm, not really saying what you mean and trying to drive home a point. It can also be really misleading. This is similar to the passive aggressiveness. For certain people who aren't as bright, me sometimes, this type of sarcasm can go right over my head. I'm thinking, wow, but okay, I'm having a great time. They said that they hope I'm having fun. I'm having a blast. Come back and they're like, I can't believe you were gone for hours. You didn't, hear what I was trying to tell you. And I'm like, you said.
I hope you have a great time.
So just be aware of this. Really think about saying what you mean. And not only that, but communicating to be understood rather than communicating out of your emotion without really thinking how it can be taken.
Yeah, it's not easy sometimes. And again, going back to the awareness, when you're aware of these things, you're not going to be necessarily, just reacting. If you get how you're feeling, you're like, okay, it'll keep you from necessarily reacting and just being sarcastic in the moment where all of a sudden next thing you know, you're getting into a fight. So you have to be aware of that and your tone. And sometimes you try and say something in a playful way and it doesn't come across that way and it leads to an argument. I remember actually with the Applebee's girl years ago, we were texting about coming to get some stuff, and I tried to make a playful joke about I had a really large fish tank at her house that took like 4 people to move, like it was huge. And so I was just trying to make a joke about, like, she's saying that her brother and his friends would help move the tank or whatever, and I just tried to make a joke about like, oh, I'll take what I can get. Just trying to be playful, and she's like, you shouldn't be joking around like that. And I was just like, whoa, like, because we always had a bantering kind of humor, but I guess because things were so sensitive at that point, she didn't catch that I was just trying to be playful about, I'm just trying to be playful about it because I loved her brother and, so I didn't mean it like that. But texting, you don't really pick up on that. And especially in a breakup where things are really sensitive, you got to be careful about being playful in text messages.
Oh, yeah.
Which is why I don't
yeah.
joke around in text messages when we talk about text messages. And that's why I say you really don't want to try and text too much.
Yeah.
Because there's so much that doesn't come through in a text like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to be careful, especially because things can be misinterpreted very easily.
Yeah.
Also thinking about what emphasis you put on words. A really great example of this, if you haven't heard it before.
Yeah, that's a great example.
I haven't even said it yet.
I was putting emphasis on the word.
Gosh, you're so patient, Craig. So patient.
Thank you.
We're going to build some resentment after this video. It's not going to be good. So the example is...
After all these examples, these great examples you've given.
Wow. Okay, the example, for instance, is I didn't steal your wallet. If you put the emphasis and the stress on a different word, it can have a completely different meaning. So if you try it out, I didn't steal your wallet. It sounds a lot different than I didn't steal your wallet. So communication, tone, emphasis, stress, very important. Things can get misinterpreted.
And all I can think about is Patrick and Man Ray.
True, that episode.
Is this your wallet? That's not my wallet.
That's not my
Here,
wallet.
it says your name. Nope.
Margaret used to always say, you can say just about anything as long as you say it in a good way or in the right way. And I really do think that's true. When we're talking about vulnerability with the partner, we want to be open about pretty much anything. We want to be able to feel safe and be able to share a partner, even some uncomfortable talks. So with that, it does take learning the art of communication.
Yeah. It's not going to be perfect because you have somebody that's meaning it in one way and somebody who's interpreting it in another way. And, you can do your best, but there's always going to be miscommunications. But when you're mindful of yourself and how you're doing it, it can really help decrease the miscommunications, the arguing, the negativity, the things that hurt the connection and ultimately make somebody less likely to stay.
Exactly. We did want to leave you with a couple of quick tips for how to communicate well, since we talked about some bad habits. The first one being thinking about how you're feeling. We already talked about that awareness. We want to be able to connect with our partner. So this can be using touch. It can be, holding their shoulder, putting your hand on their leg if they're receptive to that. This can be using eye contact. That can also be really helpful.
Like, hey, I didn't take your wallet.
I didn't take your wallet. So these types of things can ground both parties and prepare for a conversation. Also thinking about when and what mood the partner is in for that conversation. Other things also include using I statements. Sometimes we can jump to conclusions. You're always late.
Oh, yeah.
Rather than, I would really appreciate it if you could be here on time. Totally different tone, same type of message of what you want that person to do. So using I statements can be really helpful. Don't assume. Don't jump to conclusions. Sometimes we think like, well...
You took my wallet.
Yeah. We do jump to that conclusion and think we already know the answer, think we know how our partner feels.
That's a big one. That's a big one, that mind reading. I know what they're thinking. I know what they're feeling. Well, you may be right a lot of the time, but it doesn't mean you're right all the time.
Right.
And it's those misses that are going to cause the miscommunications.
Exactly. So be aware of that. Be aware of assuming what your partner feels like, thinks, or any opinions or beliefs that he has about you or the relationship. You really want to question everything and approach it with a sense of curiosity. What does my partner think of this? I might be feeling unloved in this relationship, but does he think that he's being loving? Maybe, maybe not. So approach with curiosity, ask open-ended questions, and also release those judgments. Now, it can be easy if we experience the same type of conflict over time to then assume that our partner is a certain type of way. Like if the dishes are always dirty, he's just lazy, or she's just lazy. So try to release those judgments there and aim to understand. Why is it that those dishes aren't clean all the time. Maybe there is a certain amount of stress after work. Maybe there's something about the scent of the dish soap. Who knows? But approaching it with curiosity can be super helpful.
Absolutely. Learning skills to communicate better and understand better is only going to help your connection. It's only going to make your relationship stronger. And the stronger the relationship is, the less likely somebody is going to be to want to leave it. Mm-hmm. And so it's not on one person to do this. It's on both people to create this together. And so you really want to take a look at how you've communicated in the past, areas you can improve, what you can do when your ex comes back, and really learning the skills and implementing them to have that opportunity and make things a lot more likely to last and have a great relationship with them.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And it might just take better smelling dish soap.
You never know.
You never know. That would be pretty ridiculous.
Or hiding your wallet in a better place.
Yeah.
All right. So hopefully you found this video helpful. Of course, if you want to get our help personally, you can do that on my website, askcraig.net. I do email coaching and I do Skype. Coach Victoria is also available for wallet stealing.
That's terrible. I'm not here for wallet stealing, but if you would like to chat, I am here for you.
Just click on her name at the top of the website to schedule with her. But that's it for this video. I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And we will talk with you soon.